Remember last year, the nightcap was the Bills absolutely pummeling the Saints, where the game was done within a few minutes. This was kind of one of those where it was a good ebb and flow with all three games yesterday.
Yeah, you were not looking to go to home alone with these games. They were good, right? You were not looking to go to some, planes, trains, and automobiles. These were good games. And
good games.
I thought as you take a view back, the Cowboy offense is really good. I mean, they've racked up over 400 yards the last 4 weeks. They've overcome some turnovers. And the Giants can't overcome injuries. They can't overcome their lack of real play at quarterback. They can't hide them. We're into week 12. You can't hide your quarterback after 12 weeks. He's got to come play at some point, and they can't really let him play. And so that's an issue. And then where the Giants have been good all season, Patrick, they've been really good on third down, and they've been really good in red zone defense. Yesterday they were a disaster in both areas. And part of the bigger problem with the Giants is the Giants haven't been able to run the ball. They haven't been able to run the ball. And when you take away Barkley and you put it all on Jones, it's not going to be. And so what I wrote this morning, and I'd love to hear your commentary on this, is what is going to happen? The Giants now, they play the Eagles in the last game of the season in Philadelphia. I don't think that game's going to matter. Okay, so count that as their 8th win. So now they've got 5 other games against Washington twice, against Philadelphia twice, and Indianapolis. Okay, against Philly once, which will count. Indianapolis, and there's one other game in there. It's off the top of my head. I mean, they don't have it's not an easy schedule. Washington, December 4th, next week in the Meadowlands is a playoff game. And if they're not healthy, and the one thing I would say as a bettor, Washington's ascending and the Giants are descending. And these odds are going to flip by this time next week.
Let me take a look at the NFC East odds right now. The Eagles, big-time favorites, minus 330. The Cowboys, your second betting favorite at plus 275. You go plus 5,000 on the Giants, and then, of course, the Commanders. But, Michael, I wrote down, and again, the look ahead was great, but I wrote down the Giants' strength has become their problem, and that's Saquon Barkley. What got them here was leaning on him. Remember, he had 35 attempts against Houston, who's a terrible run defense. Since then, he's toast. I mean, you watched him yesterday, 11 for 39. He failed against the Detroit Lions the week before. He is toast.
Yeah, I think to me it's like everybody knows he's got to get the football. And look, here's what happens. You run out of stuff to run, okay? So like you're watching that game yesterday, and the first thing you write down in your notes is this going to be a boot under game, which is every Giants a boot under game. There's only so many boots and under routes you can run. Like at some point you have to have a drop back pass game. At some point you got to be able to throw the ball. You got to be able to protect, and you're going to have to do that. And look, Slayton makes a great catch for a touchdown. That could have easily gone the other way for an interception. But the reality of it is the Giants without a running game, without that play-action pass element to their offense, it's just not going to work, and it's a real issue. And then they can't stop the run either. I mean, I thought Zeke finally looked like Zeke yesterday a little bit. Not great, but like Zeke. Pollard's still sensational. And, if Dak, I thought the one interception really wasn't on him, but Dak played, and they were very good in terms of how they handled the situation. They didn't let the game get away from them, and they took advantage of it when they took control of the game when they needed to.
Well, I wrote down, I think Martindale is going to be frustrated because the Cowboys dominated on the ground, Michael. Combined, Zeke goes 16 for 92. The Cowboys 169 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns on 39 carries. Also, where Martindale's defense has been stout all year, you mentioned it, red zone. Once the Cowboys got there, they scored. So third downs, red zones. I will play counter just a little bit. I thought the Giants in the first half looked really crisp and pretty good. You could tell they start running out of the script with Jones, if that makes sense. And then once they run out of the script with Jones, they struggle. Cowboys have a good offense. Let's be fair about the Cowboys. They're with those 2 tight ends getting involved, very good. Go ahead.
Really good. They're really good. We're going back to the Cowboys. Really good. I was staying on the Patriots.
Yeah, I want to hold it for 2 minutes. Let's hold that one for 2 minutes if you don't mind, Michael, because I want to ask you a question. I want to quickly ask you a question. So you mentioned the Giants. I got it for you. Remember, the Giants are going to play in division twice against Washington and in division twice against the Eagles on the way out, right? They host the Commanders. The Commanders, do you know next week the Commanders are a 1.5 favorite over the Giants right now?
I believe it. Oh, I do, because the last 5 weeks, the Giants have Look, the Giants are fortunate to get out of to beat Houston. They were fortunate to beat Houston. They turned Houston over in the red zone. So look, they won the game. They won by 6, all that. But when you watch that tape, they were very fortunate. They're descending. They're basically what's happened to them is they've declared that everybody knows how they have to play. And once you know how you have to play, it's very challenging. And they don't have an answer for it. They don't have they have no explosiveness. I mean, James was the leading receiver. He had 5 catches for 41 yards. That's 16 yards. His long game was 16. I mean, Barkley averaged 3.3 a catch. I mean, they can't make a play in the passing game down the field. And in fairness to them, their offensive line isn't 100%, but their offensive line isn't very good, and they can't really hold the ball very long.
As far as the Cowboys looking forward, check this out, Michael. So they've got Indy this week, coming up next week. They've got Houston and Jacksonville, and then Christmas Eve, they host the Eagles. That could be the East. Christmas Eve, the Cowboys host the Eagles. That's huge.
Yeah, that'll be a huge game. And look, I think the Cowboys are playing really well. They're playing a lot better when they played the Eagles the first time with Cooper Rush. That's no fact. And what we're seeing out now, this is going to be a big game for Philly, right? I mean, Philly, at what point are they going to get it back going on track? I mean, because we have not seen them really on track. They struggled to beat Indy. They didn't beat Washington. It wasn't pretty against Houston. The last 3 weeks, they have not been themselves, right? And defensively, they haven't really been as good as they need to be. So, look, this is the time of the year where you've got to determine where the arrow is, up or down on the team. And the arrow in Washington is up. The arrow on the Giants is down.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.